Welcome back to the Marvelously Uninformed podcast. We are finally back for episode 6 here, and it is a doozy, the Avengers. But for those of you that may have skipped straight to this episode, we are diving into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, movie by movie, uncovering those leadership lessons from its heroes and its villains. We are all about the laughs, the insights, and taking a fresh take on things and what it means to lead. So whether you guys are a huge Marvel fan or you're just dabbling in it, we've got plenty of fun ahead. So let's dive in. So this was a big one. The Avengers. So this is that culmination of phase 1, that culmination of essentially Marvel and Disney trying to see what can happen with these movies. And this was a huge one. It set all sorts of box office records, brought in all sorts of money. People dressed up to go see it. There were midnight premieres. Like, this was cinema at some of its finest, a blockbuster hit at some of its finest. So, Mo, this being your first time ever seeing this, I'd love to hear just those first initial thoughts and impressions. We're going to dive into the movie, but I want to hear what your initial thoughts were just thinking back to the film itself.
Because this is a leadership podcast, obviously we, are watching this through that leadership lens. And I think I was just mentioning to both you guys right before we got on, I stopped taking notes 10 or 15 minutes into the movie. It was so fast. So much was going on. And really there has to be, right? Because there's so many characters, and I thought it was a great movie. It was fun from the beginning to the end. And I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about it, because I've got a ton of questions about the Marvel Universe.
I want to take a step back already to what Scotty mentioned, that we all know this is Mo's first time going through this. Set a bunch of box office records. It literally collected like $1.5 billion. Mo, how did you yes, and this is in 2012. How did you actively just avoid this? That's a choice. That's not like, I didn't get a chance to see it, and then a decade and a half has gone by, and he still hasn't seen it until we basically no, you need to. I don't know if anyone even remembers. No, hold on. Before, for our listeners, how this started is last summer. I get a text from my oldest friend, and he goes, "Hey, I thought RDJ was doing this," and I'm like, "Well, are you caught up on this?" And he goes, "I don't know what those words mean," and I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "I've never seen a Marvel movie," and I just replied, if you didn't want to be friends after 30 years, there are less hurtful things you could have said to me.
Okay, look.
And so now I just want to reiterate, this was an active choice. And now that you've seen it, what is your feeling?
In my defense, if Nick and I had been as close over the years and been in contact, I would have seen these movies because he would have made me, or he would have, as a casual reader and a casual listener, it brought me back. And I'm really glad that I saw it. And I'm really bummed that I wasn't able to see the hype when it actually happened, because now that I saw the movie, I believe it. I believe that it made the money it did. I'm sure people went back and saw it 2 and 3 times in the theaters. I wish I could have seen it in the theaters.
Yeah, I think Nick brought up actually a really good point, that it's something I'd never considered. Like, this journey through Marvel and this Infinity Saga will be put into cinema textbooks. Like, this is something that defined a decade and more of cinematography, of the blockbuster film, because nothing has been done like it, and had so much success for so long. You get those movies that are just as successful, right? That are good, and they go on, and it's maybe 5 years or whatnot. But this spans almost 20 years and about 20 films, and just the success that it saw is going to be put into textbooks. It is amazing that you managed to not ever pay attention. It'd be like saying like, oh yeah, that moon landing. Yeah, I never witnessed that moon landing. It's like, goodness, something that defines.
It's been on cable. It's been on it's just like, how did you not catch it at some point? Like, okay,
yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I just never did.
So, but
I'm ready.
Let's dive into the movie. So we talked last time about, we went through the Captain America, the First Avenger, and we had that post-credit scene that we talked about it being added in after the fact. It wasn't originally filmed with the Captain America movie, and it was added in. But now we see that full circle right at the start, right? So we get the Tesseract. We see, oh my gosh, yep, okay, it's right there. They've got it at that SHIELD facility that's already evacuating because the Tesseract's already being weird. And then we immediately get Loki on the scene. So we immediately get that presence of that villain just right there at the beginning. And then we get introduced, we get Dr. Selvig, who is in the Thor movies that we know from and was in that post-credit scene. And then we get Hawkeye. So we get Hawkeye a little bit more. We had him in the Thor movie already, but we're getting him a little bit more right at the beginning. And lo and behold, everybody kind of gets brainwashed, or a few people kind of get brainwashed in that beginning scene. So thoughts on kind of that intro? Because like you said, Mo, like it really does. It's not like this slow build, like we've seen in kind of previous films that we've watched. It's quick. We go from boom, Tesseract acting crazy, facility explodes, we get Hawkeye, we get Dr. Selvig, we get Nick Fury, we get so many of these new characters already introduced, and the film just goes straight from there. So what are those thoughts kind of on that opening scene there?
I don't know if it's the opening scene where Nick Fury, is that where he says there was an idea? Was that the opening scene?
No, the opening scene.
I can't remember exactly where it was, but it was like the earlier in the recruitment phase where Nick Fury says there was an idea. It just reminded me of the visionary leadership that Nick Fury has, and I still don't know what his powers are. So I don't know if I'm supposed to know what his powers are or if I missed it. But
Nick
I know
Fury?
that he's Am I supposed to know his powers?
I mean,
Nick Fury doesn't necessarily. Yeah, go ahead, Nick.
He doesn't have powers. He was a CIA, a federal agent, and he just is. Nick Fury is a covert ops guy. Nick Fury, Black Ops. He did things that weren't on the books, and there's so much more to his history and who he's interacted with, and there's something that'll come up in 2 movies that really kind of dives deep into him and where. A little bit of his backstory with that, and it really is farther down the line, really dived into wholeheartedly. But there's no power for Nick Fury. There was an idea, right, to put this group of people that could do the things we couldn't, fight the battles we couldn't. So
yeah, and you can really see that in this movie because again, from the very beginning, when the two was it Hawkeye and then who's the
Dr.
the
Selvig.
scientists, they both get turned. They got the glassy eyes from Loki, and Nick Fury. I don't think he's ever really worried. That's what I love about him. He knows it's going to work out. He knows what he's putting together works. And even throughout this movie, everybody says nobody knows what Nick Fury's thinking. You think he's told you the whole story, but has he? And of course, he never has. And it always seems at some point, does this guy know what he's doing? And then at the end, you're like, guy's a genius. So. That's what I saw in the very beginning when he was talking about an idea of this team. Those are my initial leadership thoughts.
Yeah, I think those are great. We're going to you mentioned kind of that idea of Nick kind of assembling and like really kind of leading and putting together this team. And in a way, he does kind of lead the team itself. Like most people wouldn't see, him as the leader of the Avengers. Like most people would pick Captain America. But really, like he's had that vision and that visionary. And we'll get to that in a bit as he starts to kind of brings us almost to our next point, and we'll lead into that a little bit. But once kind of that explosion happens, per se, we get Nick Fury essentially realizing, oh my goodness, this is this threat. This is the threat that I've been preparing for. This is the threat that nothing that is currently of this earth or this world can handle. And so he initiates that Avenger, or activates that Avengers initiative. And we get this really, really, and it's one of probably my favorite scenes in the film, but we get this where he calls Black Widow. Well, he doesn't call Black Widow, right? But he calls it to bring in Black Widow. And I absolutely love that scene. For one, we just get another great instance of Scarlett Johansson playing that Black Widow character, which I think she does a really great job at. But then additionally, we get just the humor behind it. It's this torture scene that, and it's just, oh my goodness. It's one of my favorite scenes.
I'm working. This moron's giving me everything. And he's like, what?
That was good.
So, and it does give a quick instance too, because we don't have it anywhere else, that there was something about Hawkeye and Black Widow and their relationship, as they've had, okay, these two have worked together before. And we didn't know what kind of relationship it was, but it is a huge story arc from this moment forward.
Yeah, it really does create that connection between them. And you can see that, right? When Nick, or not Nick, Coulson, who calls her, who just states, like, hey, this has to do with Barton. Like, Barton's been compromised. And you can really see just the care in her eyes of, okay, if this was anybody else, I probably wouldn't come in right away and I would finish what I'm doing. But this is Barton. Like, I'm going to abandon what I'm doing right now and I'm going to come in. And so, yeah, it really does form, kind of give you that idea without really giving you too much background about it, but does give you that kind of first impression of just the relationship that those two individuals have. So once we kind of get through that scene, we get the people being kind of brought in. We get all of this. It's not really a montage, I would say, but we get Natasha, who's tracking down Bruce Banner, which I also think is just such a funny instance, because you get the Natasha, the Black Widow, who's trying to remain cool and collected, but knows that of everybody that she could have been tasked with to bring in, this is by hands down like the worst one because it could go completely sideways. And so it's just so interesting. And I don't know if you guys found this interesting, but I always find it interesting that he's in India. Like India is known for having a huge population of people living on top of each other. It's just very, very urbanized, yet at the same time, kind of third world, like not the place that I would think someone who wants to avoid being angry or avoid, being frustrated or ticked off would want to necessarily go. Like I'm thinking Bahamas or something like that, But I always found that so interesting. I don't know what you guys thought about that.
I looked at it as because it is similar to Incredible Hulk, which we watched a couple movies back. He's hiding, and where are there large populations of people he can easily blend in? People that want to get lost in those countries or those cities, they get lost, and so he just is trying to, and he's just helping people. He's just being a doctor, which was like he's finding peace to that point. But we learned once they're farther down in this movie where which was a really telling scene when he opens up about his struggle with the monster, with the beast, when they're all in one room together with the scepter or the Loki pokey stick, as one other creators called it. So it's like, so
Yeah, I think when Natasha is sent, I think Nick Fury says that he wants her to go get the big guy, and she automatically thinks he's talking about Stark. And then, or is it Coulson that says go get the big guy, and she says something that Stark doesn't like me. He says, "Let me handle Stark. You go get the other big guy."
Mm-hmm.
And that was interesting to me because Tony Stark is still a huge presence. He's a huge personality, but when Natasha gets to India and finds Bruce Banner, and he thinks that he's off the grid, and she says, "No, we've been tracking you for a long time now." It's like, okay. But she knows that she can't make him come in because you can't make the Hulk do anything. And so she gains his trust by being humble, by being respectful, and realizing force is just not going to work with this guy. And I really like that, again, as a leadership quality.
Yeah, and speaking of big egos, right? We get when they go to bring in Tony Stark, right? Like, what is he doing? He's powering up Stark Tower, like this giant tower that runs on its own energy, that literally has his name across the side. Like it is, that he lands on the helipad on his office level, not like his office cubicle, his office level. And then he has this whole thing that just mechanically takes his suit off. So it's just great scene. One of the things though that I really enjoy about this scene is you see the development of Pepper Potts and Tony Stark's relationship. And so you get that a little bit in Iron Man 2, right? And then, and it's laying the groundwork here, right? But you get such a kind of step into, you realize, hey, like, since the last time that we kind of engaged with Tony Stark and Pepper Potts, like they are fully together, fully in this relationship. And it's fun to see that banter because it's almost like Pepper Potts is the parent in the relationship. And Tony Stark is forever kind of, doing his humorous quips and his jousts, and Pepper Potts is there to just kind of hold him steady and kind of bring him back down to earth. And I love that dynamic relationship, right? Because you've got, if you think about it from a leadership perspective, you've got the heir to Stark Industries. You've got the guy that helped bring Stark Industries into where it is from where his father was before, or brought the company before. But then you've got Pepper Potts, who is now the president and the CEO of Stark Industries, who is really working on kind of fully changing that image. And you can kind of see them almost butt heads on a few things, but at the same time, you've got those two different things. One who's just kind of that futuristic, that visionary, that idealist, and Tony Stark versus Pepper Potts, who's probably way more well equipped to actually run a company from a business standpoint, kind of keeping him withheld and keeping him down to earth.
I want to know how many of the one-liners that Robert Downey Jr. uses are improvised and how much of it is writing, because either he's an incredible improviser, and or whoever's writing his lines are awesome. Like when in that scene where Pepper calls him Phil, and then Tony Stark says his first name is Agent. Like, just things like that are just great little one-liners that don't really mean.
Yeah, the existing relationship that those two have as people really translated to good chemistry on screen. So we rounded up the team where I thought it was very interesting to watch Phil fanboy over Captain America and just this whole thing and the awkward I was watching you sleep and but it just shows that a little bit of like I just think of like this world that Steve is in now is not at all what he was, and to him he's just a good soldier, right? He's just doing what's right, and to have this is not understanding what this lore is behind him. I think it's a different thing to for him to come to grips with and really accept. Flying on the Quinjet, getting to the helicarrier, I thought that was funny how him and Dr. Banner and how he really took a lead in. Is that Banner says, "Is that all they say about me?" And he's like, "It's all I'm concerned about." Right? Like, it's like, yeah, I'm sure he knows everything else, but it's like, that's not what we're here to talk about. And I feel that is a huge quality of leaders that, like, hey, we're here to, like, in this sense, we're here to talk business. We're here to do this. And I don't really care about what people say. I just care about what you bring to the table.
Yeah, I really like that a lot. I feel like that speaks a lot into the quality of trust as a leadership. So you're assembling these people, and whether it's bringing the Hulk on board, or whether it is hiring your next CFO or hiring your shift manager, whatever it may be, doing your due diligence and knowing the background about this person and or whoever you're going to hire, but also being able to trust that individual. So knowing that, hey, I think they can get the job done. Yeah, maybe they went crazy and turned all green in their a couple years ago or whatnot, or like, hey, maybe this guy was fired from this other job, but like, I think he could be a good fit. And I think sometimes we're too quick to exclude someone because of past events. So people do change, and, past events may mean failures. And we talk about it all the time, how failure is just one of the best teachers. And throughout this first really phase of the Marvel movies, like, we can see that time after time, right? Every movie has a hero that has failed, or an organization or something that has failed, and they always come back stronger. They always learn from it. And so, not to say that you should, go, hire the serial killer that was released on parole, but at the same time, like, think about those people, know that people can change, know that people can, really contribute, even if they maybe had an issue in the past where they were fired or were disciplined for something or whatnot. And so I think I think, Nick, you just hit it right on the head. I really like that aspect about Captain America. Just that idea of, you're here to do a job. Like, yeah, you got to pass, but I believe you're going to do good now. I believe you got it under control, and we're going to conquer this together.
And the fact that Captain America is always dressing like he is from 1950.
Yeah, but like, can we be honest though? Like, do we maybe wish this is such a tangent? But do we maybe wish that we still kind of dress like that a little
Absolutely.
bit? Like some of the stuff that I see people in today, I'm like, man, people knew how to dress back then. And today's,
I'm
like,
a jacket like that to ride my motorcycle. I
don't even own a motorcycle, and I'll probably get a jacket like that to drive my Camry.
With your Los Angeles Dodgers sticker on the back?
Heck yeah. It would fit. Let's be real. With my LA sticker on the back, it would fit. Anyway, so once we get this team assembled, we kind of move to the first kind of climactic part of the movie, or kind of big story arc, so to say. We get Loki in Germany. And this is such an interesting scene. And it's almost, and I don't know how you guys feel about it, but it makes me laugh. But then it also makes me cringe just internally. It's like watching the Scott's Tots episode in The Office, where he promises to pay for these kids' college and then definitely can't. It's just that cringe, like, internal embarrassment that you feel for another person. But when Loki kind of, I love how he just waltzes into this thing, just grabs the guy, flips him on a table, and I'm going to say scans his eyeball, but it's probably like rips it out. I'm not really sure. He screams enough that it seems like it's ripping it out. but it's just nonchalant. It's just like, oh, this is Tuesday, and it flips him over and everything like that. But the part that makes me cringe, he gets outside and he gives this just speech. And to me, watching him give that speech is just that idea of, man, he wants recognition so bad that he's willing to give this huge montage, look at me, your pathetic speech to like 70 people. Like, there's 7 billion people on Earth. And he's like, oh, these 70 people that I just scared. Yeah, this will work. This will work. And it's just one of those things where I watch it and I'm just like, man, this is so cringe because it's just sad. Like, it's sad to see kind of how far he's fallen, from Thor, right? Like, he's fallen, he, disappeared, fell off the bridge, and just to hear him kind of try to just gain some sort of recognition, but it come off as like a 5th grade running for president speech at your elementary school. Like, nobody really cares. It sounds kind of pathetic. And so I don't know what your guys' thoughts are on that, or if you feel the same way, but yeah.
Yeah, his speech was weak, but it was awesome when Captain America shows up. And I wrote the quote down here. The last time I was in Germany and saw a man standing above everybody else, we ended up disagreeing. Just such a great line for Captain America to say.
Which just, it's the first time Tony and Steve meet inadvertently, and you could hear the disdain in Tony's voice, Captain, because, we learn more about it. We learn more about it as the movie progresses, but you hear that little contempt and the nicknames reindeer games, right? Because of the horns.
Yeah.
So now they've got him on. Loki's
Mhm.
on the Quinjet, and he's like, "What are you scared of lightning?" I'm not usually fond of what follows.
That was good.
Yeah, that was a good one. That was one of
It
my
was
favorite lines in the movie.
I love that. And then Thor, let's like, they open the bag and then in walks Thor, just grabs Loki. And he's like, yeah, I'm out. I'm a god. You guys don't matter, sort of thing. There's arrogance all around, right? And I think that's a big theme. And when we get to them on that once they get on that helicarrier and they're talking, I think that's such a big theme that flows through this first part of the movie. There's zero humility. Except maybe on the Captain America. We should come up with a plan so we can work together. And Tony just ignores him. And so you've got all of these people that are that always think that they know best.
No, that's a trauma that he's carrying with him. That he just always being not the favorite and being different than his brother and all those things. It's just sad reality that there are things that people carry that with them, except they don't have the ability to take over the world with their godlike powers and being so strong.
Yeah. And I think one of my next favorite lines comes like right then too, because you get them talking and Thor's like, I want to tell you blah, blah, blah. And before he says it, Iron Man takes him out. Loki's just like, what? I'm waiting. You just get this humorous scene of where like Loki is just, in that moment of ha ha ha, like I won this conversation because you're no longer here.
Yeah, they and then we get a little bit of those three pivotal pieces of the MCU just kind of taking a one-on-one hit, and Cap's trying to diffuse it, and the other two are just running on pure emotion. And so we kind of see. I enjoyed seeing, and it was part of the trailer, but it kind of comes back to where uh they're back on the helicarrier as a team or as a group, and he got a mean swing there. Point Break, no hard feelings, right? Like he got a mean swing because he was like, put the hammer down, and he did. And, that clearly where that came from. Speaking of the helicarrier, there's something we glossed over. So when Steve gets on it the first time, does anybody remember? Okay, Scott, I know you've seen this maybe as much as I have. Mo, I don't know if you picked up on it. If you go back to the early in the movie when Steve is in the gym and he's hitting the bag, right?
Yep.
Fury comes in with a mission, and they're having their conversation. There's a point where you'd be surprised, and Cap says, "I don't think there's much that would surprise me anymore." Right? And Fury says, "Bet you $10." Right? Fast forward to when Steve first gets on there, and he's on the bridge. Right? Did anybody pick up on? He slips him some
Yeah, he
money.
gives him $10.
He gives him $10, and it was like. No, if you're not paying attention, you miss it. But it was just one of those things. Like, yep, here you go. I got you $10.
Well, I'll say this, Nick. I did see that, and I got the reference. But I have to admit, before Scott even asked me, I totally missed the cameo from Stan Lee again. and I was looking for it this time. So whenever it is, just let me know. But I missed it.
I'm gonna be really honest too. I did not make that $10 connection till now. I just thought Captain America got on the helicarrier and was like tipping Nick Fury.
Thanks for a job well done.
Like
He's tipping him for a ride.
I don't know. I honestly thought it was one of those things where it was like, oh, there's probably another part to this that they just cut out in the final take. And okay, that makes so much more sense. And you got the part of the bridge too where Tony Stark is like, that man is playing Galaga.
We wouldn't notice, but we did. I think it becomes a little pivot point, and I really enjoyed a piece of Captain America's arc because Tony helps open his eyes, pull the wool back a little bit. Like, what are they not telling us? There's something they're not telling us. And, he's got Jarvis has been analyzing SHIELD files since the moment he set foot on the bridge. But there's before we jump into that, there's a piece when they're sitting all around the table and it was right after the Point Break thing. And there's a reference to flying monkeys. And Steve goes, I got that reference. And the fact that eye roll from Tony Stark has been the most legendary meme for a decade plus because it's like, I think he pulled a muscle.
Oh, is that where that comes from? I didn't even know that.
Because he's
it's so quick.
I got that one. He's like, you can even the mouth like, ugh. Like, he's so disgusted with Cap, he can't even be in the same room with him. And that's where that picture of RDJ rolling his eyes comes from. It's like that quick.
Yeah, when they're sitting at that table and they're talking, like there's so much dysfunction.
Mm-hmm.
And because there's ego, obviously there's secrets involved now because nobody knows what Nick Fury is telling who to what. Nobody trusts each other. And there's a need for leadership. And for me, that was the first point where they're all together where I thought to myself, they need leadership. They all know it, but nobody wants to talk about it because they all have egos. They're all their own person. So that tension for me as a leader, as a leadership consultant, when I see teams, when I'm sitting around boardrooms or with people that they've all got a bunch of egos, until they figure out that vulnerability and how to use it in the right way, dysfunction is going to rule the day. And that scene was the main piece for me.
There's so much distrust between everybody because you've got Captain America who, to a fault, always thinks the best of everybody, like always sees the good in people. And, he'd be the one, he's Luke Skywalker, right? Like I know there's good in him, like just regardless of who it is, he always sees the good. And so when you've got Tony and you've got, it ends up being Banner, who kind of is like, yeah, I don't really necessarily trust what SHIELD is doing. When they start to kind of question that, then, he gets mad. He's like, why would you not trust these people? Why wouldn't you do that? And, I think we really see that moment too, where Cap looks at this dysfunctional team and says, okay, maybe I do need to trust my team a little bit more. And then he goes off right on his own and finds out like, oh yeah, SHIELD was hoping to power weapons with the cube, like the Red Skull did in the first Captain America movie. But beyond that, they put Loki in that cell in a way that was originally meant for the Hulk, to try to push if the Hulk came out and, get him in that and drop him to Earth. So you get that there is reason for that distrust. It's hard to watch. It's even more difficult in real life. It's hard to watch in a movie. Nobody wants to do anything about it. It's such a frustrating place to be as a leader and as a leadership consultant.
Yeah. On that note, if we're talking about Bruce Banner, right? He's got his self-doubt and he's got unresolved issues, and that's all of us. We've all got doubt. Or as one of my mentors once told me, Mo, 90% of people are insecure. The other 10% of us, we just feel really bad about ourselves. It doesn't matter how they look. We have to take our own issues into account. And our own personal issues, that's the limiting part about leadership. That's the limiting part of effectiveness. And that's what all of these superheroes are dealing with.
The self-doubt, the need for, it's sometimes it's not even self-doubt. I think it's just fear. And there's those little, like you said, insecurities, the fears of what if. And it's even something in myself that is like, for what I do, it's like this next place I walk into, whatever, could be the biggest account I've ever had. Could be a career defining thing. You never know. And so trying to change that mindset, but it sometimes takes something not cataclysmic, but something has to just turn that around. And a lot of that can be based in the right mentorship or the right leadership. But it's something about I think it's leadership in yourself. And like I said, with Cap having like seeing they're trying to do this, they're trying to do that. He's now seeing like I can't take orders at face value. I gotta ask questions because it doesn't align with what he wants or what he thinks is the right thing to do. I mean, there's so much that it wasn't that big of a scene, but it was because there's so much based on what we're talking about here that is just behind the line there to really dive in and think about.
Well, and Nick, I think you're absolutely right. In that moment, Tony Stark and Steve Rogers, they argue, but they begin to understand each other and their leadership styles and realize our leadership styles are not the same. They're never going to be the same. And they figured a little bit, I would hope, we got to figure this out if we want to grow. It's an iron sharpens iron moment, an uplifting moment. But at least they're understanding that now, and maybe they can end up coming together.
Yeah, I
Great
think
observation.
well, and I think one of the things I think that hits on what we've been talking about through this series, like especially with Tony Stark so far, is just the idea of self-awareness. And we talk about it a lot in Mo. I think we literally the last podcast episode we recorded for that Rising Tide podcast. I think we talked a little bit and touched on that idea of self-awareness. But that idea being that Iron Man is becoming more and more aware of what he's actually like. And I think it's because of people like in this movie, in this instance, Captain America. But I think in Iron Man 2, and then you've got that time between Iron Man 2 and the Avengers, you've got Pepper Potts, who's helping him kind of figure out and becoming more aware of what he's actually like. Once we kind of get those table scenes done and everything like that, we get kind of a pretty big fight on the helicarrier, which it always surprises me. Again, another thing, how bad security is when it comes to S.H.I.E.L.D. Like, for this giant organization that has all this technology, you've got Hawkeye, who just like pretty easily like gets onto the helicarrier. Like, I know they steal one of the ships and everything, and it helps cloak them kind of as they come in. But like overall, like there's no real question. It's like, oh, that looks like one of our ships, so that we'll let it in. And it's just, they get in so easily, you know, and he shoots arrows from it. And I find it hard to believe that this giant helicarrier that can cloak itself can't tell when it's being shot at, even by an arrow. And so it's just so interesting to me. But you get ultimately what Loki wanted to happen happens, where the Hulk comes out. He wanted the Hulk to be distracting. He wanted that everybody, you know, Thor, whoever it was on the ship, to focus on that. But even through all that, we do get this kind of unique opportunity, kind of branching off what we were just talking about, where we get to see Captain America and Tony work together, kind of in unison for the first time. And it's kind of a great scene that like kind of shows that growth that has happened.
It does, and that scene does lead to you know, a little bit more of Natasha interacting with the Hulk. We get our Thor versus Hulk for the first time, which is pretty entertaining. But we get that thing that happened, and it was, you know, that one thing that Nick said they needed. Like, they needed one last push. They needed something to galvanize the team, to bring them together. Because otherwise, they had to have something in common to fight for, because they all were too different of people. And that was where Fury shows that piece of leadership. He took the opportunity, albeit a tragic one, but that was the thing to put them back together. Like, okay, we need to do this as a team. Everybody has a strength. Let's use it.
Yeah, and the thing that you're talking about is that death of Phil Coulson.
The death of Phil Coulson.
Mo, I would love to get your leadership thoughts though on that, because right, we get Phil Coulson, and we'll briefly touch on it for Mo, because I'm not going to recommend you ever watch the TV show, but we get Coulson that dies, right? And then we get Fury that throws the bloodied cards onto the table, and it helps rally the team. And then you find out later, Maria Hill's like, those cards were in his locker, sir. They weren't on his person.
They needed a push. Man, I love that. The power of story and the power of symbolism in that moment. I just thought to myself, that's why Nick Fury is the leader.
He even took one more shot. He even took one more shot where he's like, he never did get you to sign him, did he? It's a fine line. Like, sometimes I've omitted certain details. Didn't tell a lie. You just didn't tell this part of it because it keeps the team galvanized. It keeps them focused on what is the truth at hand. They personalized the reason to fight instead of hunting this cube and this god and this thing. It's like we're fighting for Phil, so that
Yeah.
was a reason to do it. He made it
It was
personal.
just, you don't always have to tell everything. You don't, especially as a leader. Like, you are going to be privy to things. You are going to have access to things that people just don't know.
Exactly. Make it personal and like, okay, this is what we fight for. We lose Banner off of that point. So he's missing from the fight for a few minutes.
And Thor.
And Thor. Thor he goes looking for answers, correct? What is it? Remind me. Now, I'm starting to confuse two movies, I think.
You are, I'm pretty sure.
Thor gets caught in the cube for Hulk, and he gets thrown out of he gets dropped by Loki.
Yeah, Hulk gets on the jet plane.
And he ends up falling through that building, and then that old guy, the old security guy, says he was naked.
Yeah.
When he found him.
Now the Chitauri and the army, Loki's army, are coming through, and New York City is under attack. And oh my gosh, aliens are real. There's a hole in the sky. And these, like, there's enough for people to try and digest. And so the Avengers show up, minus the Hulk. And that's when he comes rolling in on a moped. We're looking at it from that different lens. And maybe that is something that somebody tries to make canon now, is like, hey, he's always angry. It's not that he loses his temper. It's that he can't hold the beast back. The beast is coming out. And then he was able to just make it happen. And I'm bringing the party to you. And I love, Natasha slips in there. I don't see how that's a party.
That was good.
Yeah, a couple little one-liners that slide in there. So I did have a problem with, so the chaos is happening right there, which oddly enough, that is in New York, but it was filmed in Cleveland. On that street, like, all hell's breaking loose, and Cap is like directing local police to do something. And they're like, what else should we listen to you? Like, dude, there's freaking Captain America standing in front of you. Like, people know who you, like, in this world he existed, and he was a story, and he's back.
Yeah.
Some beat cops chirping back at literally wearing the United States flag. He's literally wearing the flag. And then he does some stuff, and like, oh yeah, okay, now we're going to listen. I'm kind of like, that was the one thing I'm like, really, like, these guys, it would have been a huge story that Cap was back, and you're going to tell him, nah, why should I listen to you? Anyway.
I think that's a great point. And now, I mean, we've kind of jumped into that kind of ending climactic battle where we get kind of, the first time Steve Rogers, Avengers assemble, and you get that 360 spin that is just so iconic.
Captain America, when he goes around, he's telling everybody what to do. Everybody's looking to Captain America, which is a pretty sweet, symbolism of America in the front. As an army guy, I love that. He assigns the roles based on all of the strengths, and then he just looks at Hulk, and he just says, Hulk, smash.
Because Hulk is always like, Hulk doesn't really talk, and it's always been Hulk smash. Like, that's just, it's been a thing. By the way, this was Mark 7 in this movie. Mark 7 and then Mark 8 is the Mark 8 being the one he puts on there when he jumps off the tower.
Yeah, speaking of Tony Stark, this is the first time he becomes a team player. Not that he is losing his autonomy, but realizes, all right, it's team first. Let's do it. And I really like that. I really liked that Natasha is a problem solver, and she's always doing that, whether she's being emotionally intuitive or whatever she has to do. And then she's the one who actually realizes how to close the portal, if I remember. And then, of course, Thor, who I think, and I'd love to hear what you guys think. I think Thor's got the most humility out of all of them. When he talks with Loki, it always comes back to wanting to be a good brother. And he doesn't care that they're not blood. He genuinely loves him. And that part of Thor comes out in him and his leadership.
I think Thor really got that experience during the first film. Like, I think that's why we're seeing that. I think that was we talked about it when we watched that first Thor movie, just how he goes from kind of that arrogant individual. And granted, he's still plenty arrogant, but he had those experiences where he was able to kind of understand that he needed to exude more humility, that he needed to show others what it might look like to be humble. And so I think that we really got that during that first part of that film, or during that first film, and that's kind of bled over into this one, which is why we see such a stark difference. So No pun intended. But anyway, so to kind of finish out the movie here, we get an organization, and I don't remember, Nick, you'll have to tell me if they're actually named in this movie, but they decide to launch a nuclear missile to solve everything because, you know what? America, like that's what we do to solve things we don't know. We did it in Independence Day. We did it in a couple other movies. And so it's like what we do when there's people attacking the Earth, we just launch a giant nuclear missile at it. And so
named. I think it was just assumed or inferred that it was the military, the United States military. I don't think it was SHIELD because that would have been Nick Fury's call.
I was thinking it was the World Order.
Okay.
Maybe I was wrong.
I don't
Yeah,
remember.
we're confusing Mo. We get this organization that launches this nuclear missile headed for New York City. You know, not the worst thing in the world, but also a terrible thing. But we get Iron Man, who just willingly goes out to intercept and is just willing to sacrifice himself. And just something that we kind of see like at certain times when it comes to Iron Man. We get him sacrificing and or offering to sacrifice himself in certain situations. And it's just so interesting to see that. And by all means, we need him in other movies. So he does make it back out of the portal as that bomb explodes, wiping out the Chitauri.
Yeah. I don't think anybody actually thought, yeah, we're going to wipe out RDJ's character in the first team-up movie. Like, this is, you know what? You got a 5-picture deal. We're done.
They've wiped out people in first movies before.
Yeah, but not
no spoilers.
Not the guy.
Yeah, you're right. That's true. That would be so tragic. But anyway, so Nick,
let me ask you this question then.
Yeah.
Would Tony Stark really thinking he's going to die?
There was a chance.
I don't want too much.
No, I mean, they even say this is a one-way ticket while they're trying to talk him to him. And I think he was willing to, but I don't think even in his mind, he thought this was it. Like, it was just about time. It wasn't that he couldn't do it. It was like, can he get back down fast enough before the hole closed? Which, obviously, it's a good thing he solved the icing problem from Iron Man 1, because now he's in space. Remember? Like,
yeah,
that
there's
was
a
awesome.
little callback. There's a little callback right there to like, oh yeah, how'd you solve the icing problem? Well, that was that too. But here it was like Jarvis had a line in the first Iron Man, like, well, we'll look at this for interstellar travel. So they were
Wow.
all like little things that are just like, it really, things that are said become something. And that's how, for those that are not avid readers, like, and they don't really do it anymore. It was something Marvel did in the 90s. It was like, you see somebody say something and they reference this event or this building, and it's like, see issue 481. Do you know what I mean? Like, oh, we talked about this once before, but if you want to read it and learn more about it, you can go back and pick this up. It's something that, I know that Stan Lee always felt that every comic needs to be written and done as if it's somebody's first time. And so
Awesome.
they
I love it.
would leave those little breadcrumbs. I don't know what that means, but it must be important because there's a little asterisk at the bottom to see issue Amazing Spider-Man 350. And you go back and now you can go get 350 and understand, oh, okay, now it's bringing you more of the story organically. But no, I don't think the character arc would have been complete. But he did answer Cap's question or statement, his rebuttal, when Cap said, "You're never the guy to lay it on the line. You're not the team first guy." And I think this is when they're going back and forth right after he's like, "Take off that suit. What are you?" Da 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 da. I think that's the first time we're really seeing Tony. Okay, if I don't do this, New York is gone. Everybody dies. Did he do it for himself? Did he do it just to make sure Pepper was safe? Or did he do it for everybody?
Jeez. All right. Well, shoot. That was good kind of wrap up of that film. So before we go, just kind of the sum up here. So we get the very, very end, we get that Tesseract that takes him up. And then at the end, we do get our Stan Lee cameo then. So it is where they are flashing the images on the TV from like the different news stations. Stan Lee is one of those cameos. He's actually playing chess in the park. And it's a news reporter and a man, you see Stan Lee and he essentially says, "Superheroes in New York, give me a break." And
Got it.
so a little bit of humor right there. So not too big of a scene. And then we get our 2 post-credit scenes. One of these is definitely a big one, right? It's that first one where we finally get to see in the chair as he turns around, we finally get to see Thanos. And
is that who that was? The guy that's made out of rocks?
yeah, he's not made out of rocks, but I can see how he looks like he's made out of rocks.
Wait a minute, that guy's not made out of rocks? He looks like a big rock.
It's really just Grimace, like, if we're gonna be honest. Fed up with a Hamburglar. Yep. And so yep. And this was really the first film that showed us Thanos and gave us, okay, here is like the ultra mega villain that has been kind of influencing certain things throughout certain films. And not all the films, obviously, like we do get, villains throughout like this first phase that have nothing to do with Thanos, but this is where we go, okay, Thanos is that ultimate villain. He's going to start playing a bigger role in things.
I have no idea who that guy is. I don't know why he's important.
And
Did anybody know who he was? Like a casual watcher or reader? Would they have known who he was?
I definitely think readers would have known who he was. He was a big villain as far as like historically throughout Marvel. He did play a really large part in the Marvel series and different Marvel series. And additionally, some of the animated TV shows and animated movies that had already come out prior to this did have Thanos as a villain in those. And so it was pretty exciting to see him for the first time on stage. Or I should say not on stage, but in film. And so it was a great opportunity to kind of see where we're headed, kind of giving us that hint of like, oh my gosh, all right, let's go. Like, what is going on? And I do think one of the best things that Marvel does too with things like that is they introduce Thanos, and you'll see we've got, more movies coming up, but like he's not present in every single film. Every single film connects to one another, but at the same time, you're not going to see Thanos like pop up in the stands at a ballpark every time. So, but anyway, the second post-credit scene we get was wanted by Robert Downey Jr., Avengers eating at a shawarma restaurant. And it was added after the fact. It was meant to just be kind of humorous, kind of showing them tired and beat up and just very quietly eating. It wasn't originally going to be in there, but it is a payoff from Tony's earlier line where he mentions in the film that, we'll get shawarma after this. I know a great place in New York.
Yeah, that's right.
And so it's just meant to be comedy, ironic, but it has become one of the fan favorite moments in the film.
It was definitely one of my favorites. And I loved that, hey, even leaders need recovery, right? Even those who save the world, they're just not going to the next thing. And so we could all use some shawarma. In fact, as soon as I watched it, I was like, I need to look up a shawarma place out here because I haven't had good shawarma in a long time. Also, sharing the struggle builds unity. So we see from the very beginning of the movie where they barely get along, they don't want to be in the same room together. Now they choose to hang out together. I know I'm probably reading way into this, but they struggled together. They played together. They did it together. And so, now they're just hanging out and they're bonding. Sometimes we just need to celebrate the mundane, the things that don't seem like they're big. So leaders, my final for you out there is when you're running hard between your triumphs or your failures, sometimes you just got to let the dust settle.
What a great way to kind of finish out this podcast. And just what a great movie. What a great opportunity to just really kind of see these different leaders that we've seen through the first phase kind of come together. And we're going to jump into phase 2 for our next part here. And we're going to get new characters, some of the same ones. We're going to get brand new characters, and we're going to get to develop even more. But thanks, everybody, for joining us on this episode of Marvelously Uninformed. We hope that you guys enjoyed it, and we promise to be a little bit more consistent about these episodes from here on out. If you guys had fun, just make sure you subscribe, share, let us know your thoughts, comment away. We love to read those comments. And until next time, remember to brace your inner leader, stay marvelous, and we'll catch you in the next episode, Iron Man 3.